they are ready, I will. Okay. One minute, they will show all the saloons. They're ready. That's good. Okay, they're all in all the rooms now.
Welcome everyone to this first Metaverse event of World Investor Week, a global campaign from IOSCO on financial education and investor education and protection. My name is Vasco. I would like to thank you for joining us today, and I'll give the floor to our colleague Thiago Iaca. He is going to say a few words about the Metaverse, how to interact with this new platform before we start with the webinar. Thiago, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, thank you, Vasco, and congratulations for all the speakers here. Thank you, IOSCO and CVM and Nebraska for providing this space during the World Investor Week. And thank you all for watching us from Zoom and our audience in the Metaverse. I'm Yak, founder of MetaMarket Space. MetaMarket is a platform created for the capital market and corporate events, supporting, for example, shareholders meeting and immersive spaces. With the advantage of the Metaverse and the blockchain technologies. So I'm glad to be here as Inform MetaMarkets to host this important talk provided by IOSCO during the World Investor Week. And you all are welcome to join us directly from the MetaMarket space. Just go on the market page, metamarkets.space/WIW, and just scroll the page and choose one of the available rooms to join directly from the Metaverse or in our Zoom call. You can also redeem your proof of participation in each space. So there's a link in each space to redeem your NFT. And each space also have a link to send questions to our speakers here. So thank you. I hope you have a nice talk today. And Vasco, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for these clarifications and mapping how we can use this platform. I think people that are watching us from the Metaverse, they know there will be a moderator in each room, so you can have any questions, you can direct your questions to the moderators of the different rooms in the Metaverse space. With that, I want to invite Mr. João Pedro Nascimento, Chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission, for the opening remarks. Mr. João Pedro, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Vasco. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I would like to give a warm welcome to everyone. It's a great pleasure to represent the Brazilian Securities and Exchange Commission, CVM, on this webinar, along with my colleague, José Alexandre Vasco, who's the officer responsible for guidance and investor protection here at CVM. Congratulations, Vasco. It is time to celebrate the World Investor Week, and therefore we should recognize those responsible for the organization of this event. It is an honor to share this panel with Abrasca, a great companion of CVM in Brazil. They are the association that collectively represents the Brazilian publicly traded corporations. We are all together in the effort to further develop the capital markets in Brazil. This global campaign is really important on the promotion of investors' education and is also a great opportunity for interactions between securities regulators. My task on this webinar is to discuss the Metaverse, capital markets, challenges and opportunities. This subject is totally up to date and completely in line with the agenda that we are currently implementing at CVM. Our effort here in Brazil is to build up a modernly fashioned CVM that uses technology in the securities regulation. In near future, I believe that securities regulators all over the world will be using softwares, apps, and artificial intelligence in the surveillance and monitoring of several functions within the scope of the regulation of the capital markets. But then when we stop and we start to think about the use of technology for things related to corporate governance, and then we step in the scope of the discussion today, like the metaverse, it's important to say that over the past years in Brazil and around the world, the use of technology contributed with relevant developments in shareholders' meetings. The adoption of remote voting systems, remote participation in shareholders' meetings is getting often, as well as the use of technology to improve proxy solicitations and other shareholders' meetings aspects. We are dealing with improvements on corporate governance, therefore. During the COVID pandemic, the Brazilian corporations law was altered and modernized. We have recognized the possibility for shareholders to vote and to participate remotely on shareholders' meetings. We have admitted virtual and hybrid shareholders' meetings. Several regulations and normative acts from CVM have also been reviewed. Then that is the question. Should we consider the metaverse in the near future? I should say that the corporate law and securities regulation are prepared for that in Brazil. But I ask myself if the technology is already available and accessible to everyone. Then we start talking about opportunities. And I would like to emphasize that we understand that the adoption of new technologies on shareholders' meetings is welcome and must be done in such a way to expand horizons and not to limit the exercise of rights. We think likewise for many different forms of application of technology in the capital markets. We deeply encourage people to use technology as a device to democratize and increase access to rights for the market participants. But talking about challenges, we are contrary to the reduction of the shareholders' meetings to exclusively virtual, non-present meetings where debates and discussions do not take place or in which there is limited interaction between participants. Technologies should not be a finalistic issue by itself, but rather a device to accomplish other targets and solve problems of the real world. Traditionally, we say that shareholders' meetings play an important role as they enable shareholders to be involved and collectively monitor the company's activities through three special functions. The information function, in which shareholders receive from the company information about the relevant matters that are going to be discussed during the shareholders' meeting. The forum function, shareholders are offered a place to debate and pose questions regarding the company. And the decision-making function. Shareholders gather together in order to collectively make decisions and determine the company's will. These three functions have recently suffered important changes and undoubtedly have also been reconsidered so as to avoid obsolescence of corporate law and securities regulation. It is inconceivable to think that new technologies will not have any impacts on shareholders and management relationship and or on large companies' organizational structures. In face of such changes, it is essential to study and comprehend classical institutes of corporate law in view of the outcomes related to the adoption of technologies. The analysis of the application of new technologies to shareholders' meetings is innovative and extremely relevant for the business community. Well, getting to the end of my speech, the main goal in the use of technology is to bring shareholders closer and to contribute to intensify shareholders' activism and fight shareholders' absenteeism. Enhance shareholders' activism is an important public policy for the democracy of corporations and development of the capital markets, not only in Brazil, but all over the world. Therefore, I finalize re-emphasizing that the adoption of new technologies on shareholders' meetings is welcome and must be done in such a way to expand horizons and not to limit the exercise of rights. This is the challenge that we all need to surpass so as to bring corporate governance to metaverse and cyberspace. Thank you all for the opportunity. It's a pleasure to represent CVM, and I pass the word to my colleague Vasco. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mr. João Pedro, for such inspiring and deep words and deep thoughts about the possibilities of the metaverse and the use of technology in capital markets. I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Eduardo Lucano Ponte, Chairman of the Brazilian Association of Public Companies, Abrasca, also for his initial remarks. Mr. Lucano.
Thank you. Thank you, Vasco. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor for us at Abrasca to participate in this webinar about the metaverse environment, organized in partnership with the Brazilian Securities and Exchange Commission, CVM. Abrasca is the Brazilian Association of Publicly Traded Companies, which was established over 50 years ago and voluntarily brings together companies whose shares trade on the B3, which account for more than 85% of the market capitalization of all listed companies. Abrasca's mission is to create value for its associates. We accomplish this goal by organizing our work through technical, capital markets, legal, innovation, accounting standards, tax, and governmental and institutional relations commissions. Through these commissions, we are able to organize the issues that impact these companies and work with governmental and regulatory agencies, as well as judiciary, legislative, and executive branches of the government to come up with solutions. One of our main priorities is to improve the shareholders' meetings. Every year, we convene our legal and capital market commissions to review the meeting season with the associated companies and thus take stock on the positive aspects and those that require improvement. In this regard, as a result of the pandemic, we have come to realize the importance of digital meetings. Abrasca has worked diligently on this issue, advocating at CVM and Ministry of Economy the conversion of the provisional presidential decree into a law which aimed to institute digital meetings and make corporate deadlines more flexible according to the pandemics. We have been working on this issue persistently in our capital market and legal commissions. And recently, in an initiative of the lead capital market of Abrasca's Innovation Committee, which will be addressed during this event by Rodrigo, our global consultant and Abrasca's representative in this meeting, I would like to thank the speakers for their presence and to turn the microphone over to CVM Superintendent of Guidance and Investor Protection, José Alexandre Vasco, who will moderate the discussions, and to whom I would like to express my appreciation for this collaboration and applaud the initiatives he has been undertaking at the CVM. May everyone have a great event.
Thank you very much, Mr. Eduardo Lucano, and especially to your team for supporting this initiative and for trailblazing a new experiment that we are testing this in this first global event on the metaverse. So thank you so much for your support again. I'd like to perhaps to introduce our next guest, the speaker, Mr. Rodrigo Maia. Maia is the CEO at the Investor Relations Brazil Institute, and it represents Abrasca at International Capital Markets Associations and projects related to digital innovation in the capital market, blockchain, cybersecurity, and data science. he served for almost 14 years as investor relations for Gerdau, a Brazilian company, with the last role as general manager, reporting directly to the CFO. So thank you so much, Rodrigo, for joining us today. I'd like to give the floor to you for your presentation. Thank you.
So thank you, Vasco. And also, I would like to congratulate the really brilliant words from João Pedro and Lucano. I think we are in a new moment globally. I made the decision to change my, let's say, headquarters from Brazil to Portugal. I think this is really a perfect moment to be in Europe, but not only to be in Europe, I would say to be global. And to be global, you have to decide what the next steps you have to do, mainly to develop capital markets in Brazil, which is our main target at Abrasca. We think we have at Abrasca the right way and the perfect, let's say, connections to support the regulators in Brazil, to support the stock exchange, to support the government in Brazil. So Lucano, for years and years, been developing, let's say, a national network that can connect easily the government to understand the pains, you know, all the problems, the issues that the public companies have in Brazil. And it is not only in Brazil. This is globally, because when you look to our, let's say, users, that you can say like this, or investors, they are already digital. They go to the mobile phones every day. They look at the TikTok, they look at Instagram, they look at Google, LinkedIn. They know about everything in minutes. And sometimes we have to make difficult decisions. I talk about the regulators, I talk about the stock exchange, or even about the investor relations officer. That, you know, sometimes, like João Pedro mentioned here, we have to be diligent. We have to have compliance. We have to understand all the rules in the traditional world and apply to the metaverse, multiverse, whatever. So this is the big challenge. In this sense, as Lucano mentioned, we created the Capital Markets Lab. Capital Markets Lab is a way to support, you know, the regulators, but also to support the public companies and the startups, like we see here, Meta Markets implementing this technology that you can use a glass, or you don't need to use a glass, or you can enter by Zoom, in a sense that João Pedro mentioned, that we need to give, let's say, connection. Everybody must, you know, join and participate. So if you are doing a general meeting, you have to have the, let's say, availability in person, in digital, in metaverse, in all, let's say, the channels to be in compliance with CVM or regulators globally. So in that sense, we think it's very important for the people that don't know about the new technologies to, you know, understand, learn, and like Thiago, you know, always teach me, also not be afraid. You don't have to be afraid of the new technologies. The new technologies, they came to support you, to bring you new ideas, to develop, to go faster, to speed up connections. So I would say that in that sense, the legal office in Brazil that is now associated to Abrasca helped us in a way. With Abrasca, we sent to the Brazilian regulator CVM a request, you know, to develop general meetings at the metaverse. And the reason why, mainly, is because once you open the door to the metaverse, now we're going to have to understand, study, and develop all the compliance, all the methodology, all the needs to have this meeting at the metaverse. And this is very important because when you do innovation, you have to do the first step. The first step, I would say, is 50% of the success. So we had, the first step already, and we received the answer from Brazilian SEC CVM that okay, let's go together. Okay, let's understand better. Let's see what we can do there. But again, always in compliance with all the rules already in place that was developed together with Abrasca, the public companies, and CVM in Brazil. So this is perfect because we have now the possibility in Brazil to go beyond and to understand how we can do that. In that sense, we have the lab in Brazil, and we are open globally, to support and find new solutions, not only for general meetings. We have solutions for blockchain. And even consider blockchain at the AGMs, the general meetings, that would be perfect because if one day you can assure via blockchain that the investor owns the stocks, and this is perfect because there's no way, to see a situation where someone is not the owner of the stock and is voting in the general meeting, which is the most important event for the investors with public companies. So this is also a way to understand how we can use blockchain. We also are looking something which is very important today, and João Pedro mentioned about the question that the company will live if you have a high level of innovation and digital, you have to have cybersecurity. So we're going to have to take care of the companies. The companies are now all online. They're doing business online, e-commerce. How the companies are prepared to be in compliance with all the cybersecurity needs. So in that sense, we also are studying solutions to help the public companies, help the regulators. Also, in terms of insider trading, there is also a solution for insider trading because if using data science find who is doing insider trading, this is good for everyone. This is good for the investor relations officer, for the regulator, for Abrasca, for the investors in the end. So I would say that's another way that Abrasca can support the market in general. So I would say that we just built the case that we will send for you that are hearing us about this case about AGM, how the Capital Markets Lab developed the case together with CVM, was helped by this, like I said to Vasco early in the morning, open the doors to innovation, which is not common from my historical background in the last 20 years. I would say that really João Pedro and Vasco is coming to open the doors to the public companies to search for innovation, and Abrasca can help on that. And I'm really glad to see this happening in Brazil, because I was talking to our next speaker, European issues. This is a global new idea. So this is why it's good to be global, because when you try to develop a new tool, you have to think about the investors that are in London, that are in Japan or that are in the US investing in companies in Brazil. So really, they have to understand all the tools. So with that, I think I would like to congratulate Lucano about this, new perception about innovation and global network. And also congratulate Vasco and João Pedro about this new moment of CVM, because it's really, for me, it's a game change. And I think we can, see a much better market in the future of this moment. Thank you, Vasco.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo, for your comments. And I think the issue that you raised about the partnership or cooperation between the regulator and the self-regulatory organizations, the association of listed companies, it's a very important one. If we have time, I may have a question for you about that. I just want to give the floor to Mr. Pierre Marçal. He's a member of the Policy Committee of European Issues. He's currently a member of the Paris Bar with strong emphasis on EU commercial and financial law, and he represents the EU-based entities as well as trade associations, including ANSA, the National Association of Companies in France, which is a founding member of European Issues. Thank you so much, Pierre, for being here today. I'd like to give the floor to you. Thank you. We cannot hear you. It seems your phone is mute.
You need to unmute.
I think
yes. Thank you.
Sorry for this inconvenience. No, thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure being with you. I was very interested by the first presentation, including the last one on the lab, because we have a similar initiative in the financial transaction area, and I would like to report on that very shortly. I think first business. My presentation will focus on the financial use of Metaverse in the financial transaction areas, which is key to European issuers. So business in Metaverse, as a general comment first, is underpinned by cryptocurrency and non-fungible tokens, raising issues of ownership, misuse, and interoperability. The huge volume of data used raises separate issues on data protection and cyber securities. I would like to focus here on one aspect of the EU Capital Market Union, which is the financial, which are the promotion of the Metaverse in the securities transaction areas. In this area, the Metaverse is still in its infancy. So the key challenge is to cover the complete securities processing life cycle using blockchain and distributed ledger technology. The distributed ledger technology has a potential of significantly altering the roles of key actors in the securities transaction process. I refer here to the post-trade activities, which it is the same as in Brazil. It's based on two concepts: intermediation and the use of a trusted party. Intermediation means that you cannot buy securities on a capital market without an intermediary, and the use of a trusted third party entails that the transaction can be settled only by a trusted third party, which is the Central Securities Depository, which basically ensures that there is no more trade in, no more securities in circulation than those issued by the issuer. We call it the integrity of the issue. And on the other hand, the trusted third party ensures the guarantees the ownership of the securities acquired by the buyer. So the metaverse and the use of distributed ledger technology will completely change the role of key actors in these post-trade activities. Some of them, I mean the custodians and the Central Securities Depository, may no longer be required as the buyer and the seller can deal directly without any intermediary, be it a bank or be it Central Securities Depositories. Another benefit is that the transaction will be settled instantly, I think in a few seconds, whereas currently settlement requires for the trusted third party to check the delivery versus payment of the security before settling the transaction. Everything will take place instantly on the blockchain. So we have moving from the legacy regulations by focus on regulatory aspect to this new regime will require some time to adapt. And we have set up some sort, as what you call it, a lab. We call it a European lab. It's embedded in a pilot regime regulation, EU-wide, which has been adopted in 2022 and which will be implemented in 2023, and which allows for setting up a pilot regime for DLT, so distributed ledger using distributed ledger technology, multilateral trading platform, and DLT, Central Securities Depository. So every intermediary which is interested in that new scheme will have to receive a specific authorization from the national supervisor, and the supervisor, basically the regulatory regime which will apply will be the existing regime with certain exemptions. For example, one exemption would be that there will no longer reconciliation and use of the double accounting reconciliation process which is central in the CSD activity. There will no longer be this requirement subject to a tighter control from the supervising authority. So basically the scheme provides development of the technology by way of exception. So a gradual scheme, which will be implemented within 6 years time frame. And at the end of this period, the EU will assess whether some changes to the existing framework are wanted. So it's not a complete overhaul, I would say it's a gradual adaptation of the existing, I would say cautious adaptation of the existing framework. So the issue for the issuers in this interim period is that the principle I mentioned earlier, the integrity of the issuance, and second, the guarantee of the ownership of security, which underpins the whole financial securities transaction system, are adequately safeguarded, whether in the existing regime or I would say partially in the new regime. So the long term, I think the benefits in addition would be to achieve greater efficiency in the post-trading activities, and would it also achieve a reduction of cost? Because for the time being, in the 27 member states, the CSD operate on the basis of a natural monopoly. And if you are in a monopoly position, that's permitted under EU competition law, I guess, as in Brazil, but you must not abuse the system. So we consider that in the long run, it should streamline and make more efficient the services rendered by these trusted third parties in the post-trade activity. Sorry for being too long in this presentation, but I wanted to underscore the huge challenge not only that intermediaries are faced with, but issuers to accept this and to adapt to it. And I think the issuers will remain vigilant that the system is properly implemented. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pierre, for your words and especially your support for supporting this event and new innovations and capital markets. I just want to now, I think we are lucky enough to have Mr. Angel Cabo Ortega from IOSCO Secretariat joining us today. He's responsible for World Investor Week innovations at IOSCO Secretariat on social media and different platforms. So if you could, Angel, just give a short presentation on World Investor Week and the new events and types of events. It will be really interesting because this webinar is part of the campaign. Could you share your views on the campaign updates briefly on that?
Yes, of course. Thank you very much, Vasco. It's a pleasure being here. Well, first of all, I'll mention a little bit about our coverage here from the IOSCO Secretariat. I'll just share my screen a bit so you can see a brief presentation. Okay, that's the one. Okay, great. Just a second. Okay. So, what we've got now here is the coverage that IOSCO has been doing from the Secretariat side. So actually from our side, we've been laying up from the communications department, some of the press releases announcing the World Investor Week in advance. There were 3 exactly, with the 6th of June, 16th of August, and 3rd of October, promoting World Investor Week and its events. And actually we've got also on the social media side, 3 accounts that we're taking care of. It's the Facebook account, which is at World Investor Week. We've also got the Twitter account, which is at IOSCO WIW, as well as the Instagram account. From those, we're centralizing some of the messages that all of the members are sending over. And we've got our internal key messages actually that we're also spreading out. And I see that some of the members are sharing. So thank you very much. As all of you know, sharing is caring. So I really appreciate all the effort from you guys. And also we've been sharing some of the events that are taking from other members of the World Investor Week. So from that side, we've got coverage, for example, on our Twitter account, which actually we've been posting this kind of information with regularity, as well in the Instagram account that we've been posting some of the stuff. And from my perspective, World Investor Week is going pretty well with the second day, but numbers are very showing up. I really appreciate people to use, for example, the hashtags in this sense, World Investor Week, and also hashtag IOSCO WIW 2022. And every time you get tagged or you tag us, we'll be more than happy to share it in our social media accounts so we can spread the world of World Investor Week and all its events. Today we have We have posted already some of the tweets and main messages. Each day we do post, so it's we're more than happy if you guys share those posts, or if not, we're happy to share also yours. We've got some events upcoming here. Just a second. Because we do have some global and regional events that sorry for that. It is. So we did have yesterday the Ring the Bell in New Zealand, which actually went pretty well, and we did post on social media. We also had some regional launching events, which we did also share on social media as well. Today we do have this Metaverse event organized by Brazil, so thank you very much. Tomorrow we will have the World Financial Planning Day with the PFSB. We've got also a webinar on financial technology and investor protection and education, webinar on sustainable finance on Thursday and investor behavior. And on Friday, we've got the webinar on investor resilience. So there's pretty much going on social media. I hope you all stay connected. Thank you very much, Vasco.
Thank you very much for this overview of the campaign, just 2 minutes. It's very useful for the ones that are watching us now. We got a lot of questions. Not sure if we were going to have time to answer all questions we got, but I want to take the opportunity that we have the chairman of CVM here, Mr. João Pedro. We have a question that I would like to give to you is, are we ready for the shareholders meetings being undertaken at the Metaverse? What's your views on that?
That's a great question, Vasco. But first, let me just step in for a while. It's something that I've heard from Mr. Pierre from the European issuers, that they are dealing with discussions about the application of the distributed ledger technology on post-trade activities. I totally agree with you. If you take in mind that at the end of the day, the DLTs is a registration technology, there is no reason for us not to apply this on all the clearing activities that we have after trade. So for example, on capital markets, if we do apply blockchains, imagine that we're gonna have on the same scope, on the same environment, the registration of the ownership of the shares, and also the exercise of the rights inherent to the ownership. So then you can vote, then you can cast your dividends, then you can do whatever you think is appropriate by both exercising political rights and economic rights. When I look a bit further, I normally see and I normally think that we're gonna end up using a lot of the distributed ledger technology on several different aspects of the capital markets, and I couldn't agree more with you on the idea of applying this to the post-trade. But let me answer the question from my colleague Vasco. Vasco, I should say that in Brazil we are ready for the metaverse. We have a very modernly fashioned law. This was adapted during the pandemic. It's possible for people to participate remotely, to vote remotely, but I still don't believe that we are ready in terms of accessibility. I strongly encourage people to use technology, but technology has to be something inclusive, to bring democracy to the table. I don't like the idea, for example, on erasing barriers by means of the use of technology. So if for any given reason there is someone that does not have the proper access to technology, and then we simply say that all the general meetings gonna be undertaken entirely through the use of technology, we are cutting these people out, and I don't like this idea. So I really think that corporate law and securities regulation in Brazil are prepared for that. But I ask myself if the technology is already prepared, is already accessible for everyone. Um, as I told you, the challenge is to surpass those barriers. Normally, I would say that we should be contrary to exclusively virtual, non-present meetings, especially because I still ask myself if the metaverse technology already replicates the face-to-face interaction, body language discussions, general meetings. It's much bigger than the monosyllabic yes or no, approve and reject. And we should provide people an opportunity to interact, to negotiate, to discuss the future of the company. That's what corporate governance is all about. So I encourage people to use technology. I think this is the future. And I encourage technology developers to even go even further in terms of bringing to the technology the body language interaction, the face-to-face interaction. I I would like to give a compliment to people from the meta market because they are making a great work at the metaverse. The environment is beautiful, and I believe that in near future we're gonna be ready for that in terms of the use of the technology. But speaking and having in mind legislation and capital markets regulation, we are ready. And I should say that I encourage people to the use of technology.
Thank you very much, Mr. João Pedro, for your comments. And of course, and I think it's very important to say that the technology design can be made and should be made more inclusive. So technology should facilitate the meetings and also give the floor to everyone to be part of these discussions. We have also a question about the cooperation between the regulator and the capital markets associations. And we have seen a growing interest in regulatory experiments like the sandbox, which is an environment for testing new products under the supervision of the regulator. What's your views, Rodrigo, about the cooperation between the market participants through their associations, their self-regulatory organizations, and the regulator? How is this working in Brazil?
Thank you, Vasco. Well, I think if you look in terms of, let's say, digital mindset, because I've been in basic materials companies and chemical companies. It was very common to see a very traditional way to think. In this very traditional, it was very engineered. And when we start to see 5-10 years ago from Silicon Valley, from the new startups, the new way of thinking, and there was the main point here is the digital mindset. We realized that, okay, at Abraska, we're going to have to do, let's say, a job to teach, to train the people inside the companies. They must be trained and understand how we can make this connection, because the connection between the regulator, the startup, the public association, Abraska, and our main, let's say, user, which is the public company, we must go together. And this go together means regulation, legislation. We have access to the main, let's say, legal offices in Brazil, which can support the new ideas. This is very important, because if you look only at a startup as a startup and try to implement a new idea inside your company, we don't have the, let's say, the confidence that that solution can be multiplied in your company, and sometimes you are in 10, 20 countries. So I would say that the main thing that, the metaverse, for example, I'm seeing now, right now, that we are here, it's working. We have the Zoom. We have also people talking to me through WhatsApp, to LinkedIn. So that's important because you give one more channel to the capital markets, and the public companies will be able to find, the investor that really likes, let's say, TikTok. I was, just looking an article from New York Times. People are changing sometimes to Google it to TikTok to find, a new job, to find a new course, and so to be trained. So that's really something that the companies must realize. If you, let's say, multiply your channels of technology, you're gonna reach everybody, and that's inclusion. So inclusion, when you think about, if you do something that's a video, it's a photo, it's a test, people will choose. And sometimes you cannot read a textbook, but you can hear. So the inclusion, it's the technology will support us to include everybody. And this is really totally ESG. It's sustainability when you think about innovation. So that's my view. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. I have also a question for Mr. Pierre. How the metaverse can make easier to companies connect people around capital markets? Mr. Pierre. We cannot hear you. It's mute.
So voila, here you can hear me. I don't know why it has to be reactivated each time. No, your question is about how people connect through metaverse in the capital market in Europe. Is that
the question is about how the metaverse can make it easier to companies connect people around capital markets. And of course, your perspective, European perspective, will be very valuable here.
I mentioned the post-trade activities. I think financial intermediaries. I think metaverse will ensure a complete overhaul of the existing relationship between investor and their intermediaries in transacting on capital market. But I think it's, as mentioned also earlier, I think it will be broader in scope. For instance, I think you mentioned the virtual and general meeting or hybrid meetings. I think we have diverse regime which have been implemented in the various member states at the time of the pandemic. But now the issue is to have them become permanent. And I think there is a need for the EU to ensure a European harmonized approach towards the use of digital and remote meetings within the EU, and that will be the object of a forthcoming listing act, which is currently being prepared by the Commission, and of course we are being consulted on this issue. But at this time, it's not yet harmonized because, as you know, harmonization in the EU is kept to a minimum. It takes place as soon as you have an obstacle to the free movement of goods and services. If there are no obstacles, you have no harmonization. So I think based on what we call the subsidiarity principle, harmonization of corporate law takes place, but on a minimal basis. So far we are the metaverse, I mentioned it earlier, is still it's in its infancy, not only in the financial law area, but also in the corporate law area. I think an EU is still in the process of devising a harmonized approach with the EU on this issue. But you mentioned the use of blockchain technology in the registration of securities in the company's ledger. These are still in their infancy as well, and there is a need, I think, to adapt national corporate law, but ensure that it doesn't create fragmentation of the internal market, because the EU is all about achieving an EU-wide internal market. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Perhaps, Rodrigo, if you can just briefly add your Brazilian perspective on this question.
Right.
Okay. Well, and maybe, Vasco, I'm seeing here that there's a question from Mario Dominguez. What the best benefits to participating in a meeting on the metaverse? So, diversity. I remember one day I was in an analyst meeting, I think 15 years ago, and there was an old investor there. Let's say, today, I don't know who is old, because you end your life and you keep investing, you keep doing your things. So in the end, there's no old people anymore. And the guy was there. The guy was like, almost 90 years old, and he told me, I cannot see the slides in the presentation. The numbers are so small. And I told him, okay, let me find a hard copy of the presentation for you. And I gave to him. And Vasco was amazing, because after the meeting, he told me, you understand me. You understand me. So if you look today, the kids, and you try to invest, in a stocks in Brazil with someone that is, 18 years old, ask me if he will read the earnings release from the public company. He will not. He will look at the stories in the Instagram. He look at the stories in the TikTok, and he will then being able to invest. So this kind of thing in diversity and metaverse, and also what Pierre mentioned very wisely about the blockchain, it's all in the beginning. But the important thing is this kind of forum to understand, discuss, and develop this technology to go to the future, certainly.
Thank you very much, Rodrigo. I think we are short of time now. We don't have time to get more questions, but I like to thank you all speakers for the great presentations and for answering all questions we got. It was a pleasure to have you with us, especially the audience from around the world. Many people attended the event in the Metaverse. In one of the rooms, we had more than 200 people visiting the room, the Ipanema room. So I think this concludes the webinar. I hope you have learned enjoying all the presentations. And I just want to say that the webinar recording will be available online on the World Investor Week page, but also on Abrasca and CVM social media channels. Thank you so much. Have a great day. And see you next year in the Metaverse again.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.